And upstanding in the Rhema studio, Justin Smith joining me on the program. Justin, kia ora, good morning.
Ata mārie, Andrew.
Hey, today we're talking about something which, straight up, I know very little about, although it is common of people of my age. Today, talking TikTok. There's some very concerned politicians in the United States about how this is, destroying their national security, their sovereignty, their will to live, a whole bunch of stuff. But hey, let's start at the beginning. What's TikTok, man?
What is TikTok? Great question. I remember must have been 10 years ago now, potentially, when my niece made me do this ridiculous dance to this song on an app called Musical.ly. And I went, What is this? She said, it's the latest, greatest social media platform. I said, you're 7 years old. I'm a professional in this space. There's no way this is going to take off. Fast forward all these years, they merged with TikTok, the exact same equivalent app, which was launched out of China from parent company ByteDance. And here we are now with TikTok in its current form.
Is that video still around? Just you dancing with your...
That's a good... I actually don't know if I don't know if it even made the cut. It was that bad. So I don't think it got published.
I'd pay to see that.
Yeah, I need to find out. It's a good question.
See if we can get that buried. That's what it is.
Yes.
And a lot of people think, oh yeah, that's the dancing video. That's kids having a little bit of fun. Really took off during lockdown because people had a bunch of time on their hands.
Yeah.
And it's certainly a pretty dominant platform within a certain generation. It sounds pretty harmless. What harm does a nice little dancing platform do? You know, it's a bit of fun for the kids, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely was. But as you pointed out, through lockdown and just the natural behaviors of the internet and these kinds of platforms where people find them as creative outlets, you know, in their normal lives and have the ability to turn potentially mundane existence or activities into compelling content through creative expression. TikTok has now matured into a very legitimate platform where, you might say, well, that's for the kids. The actual reality of the matter now is that it's for every demographic, and that's incredibly true.
It's a giant killer. Honestly, literally in the social media space, I just need to up my dance steps game, obviously, although it is so much more than dance steps now.
Absolutely.
And if anything, I suppose, gains this much power this quickly, people are going to be asking questions. Who owns this? What's their agenda? Conspiracy theories, not just on YouTube, but also on TikTok now. And some people, some very serious people in Washington, very concerned about this. So let's break that down a little bit.
Yes.
Who owns it? Is it owned by the Chinese, the Communist Party that is gathering your information and perhaps a little bit of your soul? Because that's what some people are thinking, right?
Well, that's what some people are thinking because, as is the case with a lot of companies in China and the CCP in particular, question mark, because the answer to your question is the owner of the company is ByteDance. And in reference to the legislation, that we're getting into now, that's just recently after what's been a number of years of concerns raised at the federal and state, level, and not just in the United States as well, but in a lot of countries globally, that question mark has been enough for them to take action. So much so that, Joe Biden's just recently signed into legislation the mandate that ByteDance needs to divest itself from TikTok in order for it to continue operating in the United States. 3 to 12 months. Otherwise, it will get shuttered, which is huge.
No, that is pretty significant. Although it was, I didn't watch this on TikTok. I watched this on YouTube. A lot of confused elderly men, probably my age, which is to my shame, asking some really awkward questions about this, and in particular honing in on the CEO of ByteDance, who's Singaporean, and asking all sorts of awkward questions about his nationality and presuming that he was Chinese because of the way he looked. It was kind of hilarious, but for all the wrong reasons.
Yes.
I mean, this is the US government. This is the land of the free and the home of the brave. They're shutting down freedom of speech. And hey, they can back this up with enforcement and all sorts of stuff. But the thing is, when you start banning freedom of speech and the kids have got their phones, they'll find a way around this, won't they?
Yeah, and I suppose if in the online world of whack-a-mole, you're just taking care of the biggest, mole that's popped its head above the parapet. But it's also really important to point out that while a lot of the concerns around TikTok have, cite national security concerns and privacy concerns around users' data and potentially, the parent company's affiliation to Chinese interests, the conversation about these giant platforms having these sorts of access to data and then therefore influence isn't just limited to TikTok. We've had it with YouTube, we have it with Facebook, we have it with all these major platforms. And of the top, 5 to 10 social media platforms in the world, the vast majority of them are still US companies.
They are. It's all Silicon Valley, so they're the good guys, right?
Well,
and if you look Asian, then they're the bad guys. I mean, it's not that simplistic, guys.
No, it isn't. But, the level of scrutiny that they've, applied to TikTok here, where they've gone a step beyond what they've done with these other companies, these US-based companies and from other countries as well, but to actually sign into legislation this level of requirement, again, mandating divestment from their parent company is incredibly big. And,
Now, hey, I think some big questions need to be asked of social media companies generally, whatever their ethnicity or state of origin, as it were. Particularly what they're doing with our data and whether or not it's safe. But for here in New Zealand, is it dangerous to us? Could you see similar legislation, if not just for TikTok, then for other platforms? I mean, they're getting a bit antsy across the Tasman and Australia about this sort of stuff as well. Could we see similar legislation? Is it dangerous for consumers in New Zealand? Do we need to push back, do you think?
As consumers, I always put the onus back on the users to, and I hate doing this, but do your research and, do some learning.
But if you're a seven-year-old wanting to do dance moves, they're not doing the research.
No, they're not doing, and that's your parents' thing to deal with. But no, you do need to be absolutely understanding of the fact that when you engage with all of these kinds of platforms, there is absolutely a level of passing over of privacy, of data, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. TikTok, does it matter more so than the other platforms? For us here in New Zealand, I would actually say no, not so much. However, it's worth pointing out that anyone who's a part of New Zealand Parliament government, if they have government-issued devices, are banned from having TikTok on their phones. Because obviously when you get into that position, then, concerns national security, privacy, et cetera, are elevated when you have that level of position and access to data.
Exactly. So, we don't want the state secrets being turned into dance moves and the Chinese Communist Party getting hold of those. Does the ban also extend to Huawei phones? Because, I mean, that was a big thing in the States as well, going, we don't know where this is going. It's Apple or nothing, guys. Come on.
That's a great question. Honestly, I don't have the answer for that one. But of course, yes, that was that whole conversation, not just around Huawei phones, but a huge amount of 4G and 5G infrastructure as well for the telecommunications network also being hosted, and the infrastructure, the hardware itself being developed by Huawei. I mean, these are the natural extensions of, this kind of legislation. Is it actually about its affiliation to Chinese Communist Party or, the lack of clarity there? And therefore, who else is up for that scrutiny? That's a slippery slope.
Or is it just an election year in the United States? Just saying. And hey, Joe Biden, if you're listening, technology will always move faster than legislation. Try to catch up, but you never will, actually.
Agreed.
Justin, very much appreciate your comments. Thanks for joining us. Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.